Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus was a Roman general and statesman, most notable as one of the main architects of Rome's victory against Carthage in the Second Punic War. Often regarded as one of the greatest military commanders and strategists of all time, his greatest military achievement was the defeat of Hannibal at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. This victory in Africa earned him the honorific epithet Africanus, literally meaning the African, but meant to be understood as a conqueror of Africa. Scipio Africanus was born in 236 BC into the family of the Corneli Scipians. His family was one of the major patrician families and had held multiple consulships. The Second Punic War started in the spring of 218 BC when the Roman ultimatum to Carthage demanding that Hannibal withdraw from Saguntum in Spain was rejected. Scipio's father was consul that year, and the younger Scipio joined him in the campaign to stop Hannibal's march on Italy. In a short cavalry engagement between Scipio's father and Hannibal at the river Ticinus near modern Pavia, Polybius claims that Scipio saved his father's life after he was encircled by enemy horsemen. 2 years later, in 216, Scipio served as military tribune. He survived the disastrous Battle of Cannae. After the battle, he rallied survivors at Canusium. According to Livy, when he heard that Lucius Caecilius Metellus and other young nobles were discussing a plan to abandon the Republic and go overseas to serve as mercenaries, Scipio stormed into the meeting and forced all of them at sword point to swear to Jupiter that they would never abandon Rome. The next year, in 213, he was elected curule aedile and served with his cousin Marcus Cornelius Cethegus. His candidacy was opposed by one of the plebeian tribunes on the grounds that he had not yet reached the minimum age, but the voters expressed such enthusiastic support for Scipio that the tribune desisted. From the start of the Iberian War through to 211 BC, Scipio's father and uncle were in command of Rome's armies in Spain. Disaster struck when the brothers divided their forces to attack 3 separate Carthaginian armies and were defeated. Scipio's father and uncle would die in separate battles against the Carthaginians. In 210, the assembly elected Scipio to take command. Giving Scipio command was an extraordinary act, as he at this point had never held a praetorship or consulship, but was regardless granted imperium proconsul, taking command on his arrival to Spain in the early autumn. Scipio went to Spain with some 10,000 reinforcements and was joined by another commander, Marcus Junius Silanus. 209 saw Scipio's first major campaign. He besieged Carthago Nova, which was a major Carthaginian logistics hub and of substantial strategic importance. In the battle, he captured the city by sending a wading party across the lagoon to the city's north when it reached low tide. He told the troops that he had a vision in which the god Neptune had promised aid. This alleged vision played a role in the rapid development of a Scipionic legend. Storming the city rapidly and with little ability to tell combatants and civilians apart, Scipio ordered his men to massacre all they encountered and pillage any structures. He then forced the surrender of Mago and the citadel, sparing the remaining citizens, and only enslaving the town's non-citizens. After the battle, several Spanish tribes defected to the Romans. The next year, 208, Scipio fought Hasdrubal north of the river Betes, near Bicula. While Scipio was victorious, the battle was indecisive and Hasdrubal escaped north with most of his army across the Pyrenees for Italy. Hasdrubal and his army reached Italy in 207, where they were eventually defeated in the Battle of the Metaurus with the army destroyed and Hasdrubal slain. A decisive victory in 206 at the Battle of Ilipa, north of modern Seville, forced the Carthaginians to withdraw from the peninsula. With a general victory across the peninsula, Scipio then returned to Rome to stand for the consulship of 205. According to Livy, he was denied a triumph on the grounds that he was privatus and had never been elected to a magistracy with imperium. Scipio was elected unanimously to the consulship of 205 amid much enthusiasm. When he entered into office, He demanded that the Senate assign him the province of Africa and threatened to take the matter to the popular assemblies if it refused to do so. Despite fierce opposition, the Senate bowed to his pressure, and he received Sicily with permission to cross into Africa if he wished. The Senate assigned Scipio no additional soldiers, leading him to recruit an army of volunteers. Livy reports that from his clients and supporters in Italy, he mustered some 30 warships and 7,000 men. The Battle of Zama was fought in 202 in what is now Tunisia between a Roman army commanded by Scipio Africanus and a Carthaginian army commanded by Hannibal. The battle was part of the Second Punic War and resulted in such a severe defeat for the Carthaginians that they capitulated. Carthage was left with no army with which to continue the war. The peace treaty dictated by Rome stripped Carthage of its overseas territories and some of its African ones. Thereafter, it was clear that Carthage was politically subordinate to Rome. On his return, Scipio celebrated a triumph over Hannibal and the Carthaginians. There, he took the agnomen Africanus for his victories. By this point, Scipio's career reached far beyond his peers, even though he was only in his early 30s. On his return, he deposited some 123,000 pounds of silver into the Roman treasury. Although considered a hero by the Roman people, primarily for his victories against Carthage, Scipio had many opponents. In 187 BC, he was tried in a show trial alongside his brother for bribes they supposedly received from the Seleucid king Antiochus III during the Roman-Seleucid War. Disillusioned by the ingratitude of his peers, Scipio eventually left Rome and retired from public life at his villa in Liternum.